Hey everyone, this is Elenbaas from Nightlight Astrology, and today we are going to do some time traveling. We are going to go back in time and track out the Mars-Sun cycles all the way back to 1991. And we're going to look at about 30 years worth of Sun-Mars conjunction moments. And I'm going to share with you some of the insights that I came up with after tracking those conjunctions between the Sun and Mars for myself. I won't go into every single story, but I'm going to share with you some of the highlights and some of the archetypal themes and patterns that I noticed in tracking out those Mars-Sun conjunctions in my own history and give you some tips for doing the same for yourself if you want to, because it's really interesting. The results that I came back with, while I couldn't remember everything that was going on during every single period, the majority of the periods really stood out, and I was able to observe some interesting patterns that I'm going to pass on to you so that you can use them and use the same tracking technique. We're also going to look back at 1991 in particular, because it turns out that that was the last time that we had a Sun-Mars Cazimi in the sign of Scorpio. So that ought to be interesting as well. I'm not going to present anything that I think is particularly groundbreaking, though I will tell you a little bit about, I just looked up the Wikipedia. You can go back on any year in history and look at Wikipedia's entries for big historical events that were happening around the world. So I'll just pop out some of those for you to consider with no real agenda other than to kind of give you a sense of what was going on at that time. And then again, mostly what I'll do is I'll tell you a few little stories. I won't go through, 30 years worth of my own personal tracking. I don't want to bore you to death, but I'll share with you a few little nuggets that I was able to notice, and a few stories that sort of highlight the themes that you could expect as you track your own. So anyway, that's our agenda for today. Don't forget to like and subscribe. If you're new to the channel, welcome. Hi, I hope you enjoy the content. Feel free to share your comments and reflections in the comment section. It really helps to create a sense of community, helps to grow the channel. You can find a transcript of any of my daily talks on the website, which is nightlightastrology.com. When you are over there, remember that our new class starts this Saturday. Ancient Astrology for the Modern Mystic at last is getting going this coming Saturday. It is not too late to sign up. Go to the Nightlight Astrology courses page, click on the first year program, and you can scroll down to learn more about it. We start November 18th. It is not too late to join. There are 30 classes on the year. They're all held via webinar. They're about 2 to 3 hours each with live interactive Q&A sessions at the end. We also have breakout study sessions in between major units of study, and that gives you a chance to ask more questions if you had them and receive some tutoring support from our staff. There's an interactive group forum discussion where we also have lively discussions going on throughout the year with the staff that's there to answer questions as you have them. You can email me anytime. There's tons of bonus material outside of class. Depending on your level of intention, if you desire to go professional, you'll be on the kind of certification track. You can take a certification exam at the end, and we have sort of recommended levels of participation outside of class for people depending on really what their intention is. And oftentimes people take the program just for personal enrichment. This is a hobby. This is for your own spiritual growth. So it's there. The program is designed to meet you at your level of commitment. And that's why everything is also available in recording. Move at your own pace, download the material on your own, or attend live. Either way, you'll find the early bird payment saves you $500 off. There's a payment plan. You can spread out the tuition over a year, and then need-based tuition assistance, which is there for people who might need a little bit of help to make it happen. If that is you, please don't feel bad at all to use that, because we have a trust system in place where we trust that people who don't need the help will just pay our going rate, and then people who need a little bit of help will use the tuition assistance, and that is there so that nobody's priced out. We don't think that only one type of budget, income, or person should be able to take a course like this. So we try to make sure that it's very accessible, and we hope you'll take advantage of that if it could help you. Any questions about the program, email us info@nightlightastrology.com. Really excited to get the new program started. That's this Saturday, so hope to see some of you there. Okay, well, today we're going to take a look at, once again, at the Sun-Mars conjunction. Let's start by taking a look at where we are right now. So let me just move this ahead a little bit. So you'll see that this week, the conjunction starts right about Thursday, November 16th, here where we are, and then it spreads through Friday, the 17th. You see they're traveling together. And then the sun gets out just a little bit further than Mars by Saturday, the 18th. And then they're still within less than a degree by the 19th. And go forward a little bit more. They're traveling about a degree apart by Monday the 20th, and then really you start getting their separation here by about the middle of next week. So we are very much in the range of their conjunction right now. I was thinking about this, and I was thinking about what other tools we might be able to give people right now so that you can do some meaningful tracking with these synodic cycles. I think one of the things that helps people tremendously when they are working with a transit like this and trying to understand what it's doing in your life. It can feel weird when you're studying astrology. There's this weird sensation where it's like, oh, I'm really feeling this transit. And then 3 weeks later, there's a big transit that everyone's talking about. And you're sitting there going like, I don't feel it. I don't notice it. Why? Well, some of that has to do with the placement of the transit in your birth chart, depending on which time lords of the year you have, which is a ancient way of looking at which planets may be more sensitive in any given year of your life, or which transits of the planets as they're passing in the sky are making aspects to planets in your natal chart. There's also, however, another category, and that has to do with becoming sensitive and becoming aware of the planetary cycles and what to look for, because sometimes you can't feel a transit because you're not literally, you're just not, it's right there in front of you, but you're not seeing it. You're not able to identify it. Sometimes that's because some of this material is really unconscious. Like, welcome to astrology. A lot of the times we don't notice things in astrology is because of any of the reasons I listed. Also because sometimes the material is just rather unconscious. You're flying off the handle, getting upset with someone during Mars opposite Uranus, or someone's flying off the handle at you. And then you're sitting there going like, I just don't see the astrology, right? So yeah, that's part of it. But there's this other reason that people don't understand the transits, they don't connect with them. And that has to do with not getting in the habit of tracking them. The more that you track the cycles, because remember, Sun Mars is not a transit that exists in a vacuum. It is the new moon of a Mars cycle. If you track Mars cycles, you will learn to identify these moments more, like they become more vivid. They become more felt. They become more embodied when you learn how to track them. So I was thinking about that, and I was like, okay, you know what we're going to do today? We're going to go back, and I have literally listed out every single Mars Sun conjunction, which is the new moon of a Mars cycle, since 1991, which is the last time that the Sun and Mars got together in Scorpio for the Cazimi. So we're going to go back in time, and I'm literally just going to throw some stuff, and we'll see if it, we're just going to see if it sticks. Here we go. I'm just pulling up my Wikipedia 1991 page. Okay, so before I get lost in that, let's just show you. We're going to go back in time. Here are the okay, we're going all the way back to 1991. So I'm just going to back this up. And it was November of 1991. Then we're going to work our way forward from this space. So first of all, just notice that here they are coming together, just like they are now. And you can see how slowly that conjunction works. So this is November 6th, November 7th, November 8th of 1991. So now I just want to share with you guys some things that were going on just like collectively and historically that also turn out to be themes within the personal biographical events that I noted in not only this Mars Cazimi, but in many subsequent ones that I tracked in my own life. And they kind of match some of the things that were happening in the collective. Okay, let me just scroll forward here. There's a bunch of interesting stuff happening. And these are just, I literally just, I'm no like historical master. As you guys know, I very rarely address mundane events in the way that I do astrology. And this is not, I'm not picking events with any, bias or agenda here. These just literally things that I noticed. So I thought it was interesting that it was right around this time, November 4th and 5th was the end of apartheid. I believe that would have been is that South Africa? The African National Congress leads a general strike demanding representation of the government and an end to the value-added tax, which is, by the way, right in line with the the kinds of things that I noticed, which I'll get into more, but one of them is that you have the end of important conflicts that have a history. And then sometimes the beginning of a new type of conflict that has a future ahead of it. But ending of old conflicts and almost like battles that have a history come to some kind of end, or some form of violence or some form of oppression, or some kind of something that has history behind it with respect to bloodshed or war or something like that. Thought it was interesting that let's see here. Yeah, so you have the dissolution of the Soviet Union came just like within a very short period of time right after the conjunction in early December. So this conjunction was like early November, but if you go back in time, you'll see here, let me just show you this because it's kind of interesting. So you have the end of apartheid listed on Wikipedia, and then you have, if you go forward just a little bit to the very beginning of December, it was like December 1st, and you'll see that the planets are still, they're just separating, right? So that's the beginning of the cycle. Isn't that interesting? It can have this sense of bringing old conflicts, or it can be about separation, like conflicts that are being dissolved, and there's a sense of being done with some form of conflict. There's sometimes important acts of separation, like cutting things up or dividing things, or separations that occur. And I thought it was interesting that dissolution of Yugoslavia happened during that time. The big ones seem to have been the dissolution of Yugoslavia, the dissolution of the Soviet Union. There's an entry marked end of apartheid, so I'm assuming that's the South African situation. Dissolution of the Soviet Union, you mentioned that one. Okay, so yeah, those were the big ones that I see mentioned here. There's probably others that people could find. And as you guys know, I'm certainly not looking for people to go nuts with political takes in the comments section. I try to hold a neutral space for people of different backgrounds to grow spiritually, right? But these are interesting events that coincide with the Mars conjunction the last time it was in Scorpio. And there's others too that fell in there that I thought, oh, well, you could definitely you could probably pull some Mars symbolism out of them. But those were the big ones that I noticed right away. And I thought, well, that's interesting. There are some obviously very violent and terrible conflicts going on in the world right now. And it will be interesting to see, not only right now, but going forward in, say, the next month, where the trajectory of certain kinds of conflicts and terrible acts of war and oppression and violence are heading. But I use that as a personal starting point, because what I did was I then went through all of the conjunctions from that moment forward, going back to 1991. And I'm going to take you through them in order. And I'm going to mention very briefly a few themes that I noticed so that you can track them as well if you want to. Again, I think that doing this is really helpful, because I think that you will get the Mars Cazimi and the kind of events that happen around them. You'll start to recognize them if you look at the patterns over the course of the years. Now, I only went back 30 years because I just went back to the last time that we had the Cazimi in Scorpio, and then just moved my way forward from there. That's like one Saturn cycle since we've been there, a little plus, feels like appropriate length of time to explore today. Of course, you could do the work and go back further if you wanted to. And I know some people on this channel that may be more in your wheelhouse to take it back even 10, 20 more years before 1991. But I thought it was interesting because when I looked at this for myself, the fall of 1991, I've done a lot of different kinds of tracking in my career as an astrologer. That was the beginning of some conflict in my parents' marriage. And that was something that would eventually, many years later lead to their divorce. But that was one of the earliest times of conflict. There was also this weird legal issue that came to be resolved at that time from someone who was, there's this, like, I think it was, there was an actual name for it at some point, but it's like a fender bender scam where someone slams on the brakes in front of you to get you to hit them. Anyway, this happened to my dad, and the legal issue was like resolved and dissolved, and the guy ended up being sort of exposed as a scammer, and that legal issue came to a close in the fall of '91. I thought that was really fascinating to see that this kind of scorpionic reset of Mars's cycle was about the beginning of what would become a long sequence of conflicts in my parents' marriage that would eventually lead to divorce. And then there were these legal issues that were not a huge deal, but they were being resolved. And there was some, like, this conflict is now over. And so I thought that was fascinating. Anyway, I'm going to take you forward in time now, and I'm going to show you just some other basic things that I noticed from these periods. All right, so we're going to go forward in time, and let me just get this over here. And now I'm kind of adjusting everything, guys. Sorry, give me just 1 second. All right. Here we go. So we're going to go forward in time from 1991. And what you'll notice is the cycle plays out in the way that I explained earlier in the week. So you have these two planets going through a cycle that includes the retrograde of Mars, and then they eventually come back together again. So here they are. This is the very end, December, maybe into early January of 1993 into 1994. This was probably one of the only ones that I really couldn't find. I couldn't remember because I was a pretty young kid. I could not remember exactly what was going on during this time. This was one of the few where I just couldn't remember. But this was another one, December of 1993. So what you would want to do is look and see what was happening in your life at this time. And you think of the principle of action, the principle of conflict, the principle of separation, cutting, dividing, but also a moment of reset for Mars, which again could mean the ending or dissolution of various kinds of conflicts or the seeding of new kinds of conflicts that would be a part of your individuation going forward. So let's keep going. You're going to see that Mars cycle play out, and then they're coming back together again. And we're going to see here is they're going to come together in Pisces. So this is March of 1996. And what was interesting was around this time, I was able to identify some major conflicts in my father's workplace, which led to him moving our family, and they emerged right at this time. So there was almost like a conflict that led to our family moving. So the beginning of an important conflict right around that time, which several months later would lead to my father being relocated. That was, really fascinating. And for me, this happened in my house I am a Taurus rising. So this actually happened in my 11th house of friends. And it was the seeding period of a period of real social turmoil for me with friendships and peer groups. So fascinating. And then I'm just going to kind of jump forward here. We're going to go to, that's 96. If you go to 1998 and jump forward to the month of May, here you can see in May, the Sun and Mars were coming together in Taurus. This is May of 1998. So what I found interesting about this was a period of time that for me constituted a breakup from like a high school, a high school, what do you call it? A dating relationship. And it was a big one for me. So isn't that interesting? I thought, now again, you can do this if you run forward with it. And I suggest you look at what was going on around this time in your life to the best of your memory, the best of your ability. We go forward to July of 2000, and you can see here, they're coming together in Cancer. And I found this to be interesting because I made a conscious choice at this time to move out and not live with my family anymore. And part of that was due to some ongoing conflict that was happening in my family, surprise, surprise, around my parents' marriage. And so isn't that interesting? Trace it, see what kinds of things were happening at that time. That was when I decided to live on my own. Then if you go forward, August of 2002 is going to be the next time that we see the two planets getting together. In August of 2002, I had a conflict with a roommate that led to me getting a different roommate and living in a different environment in college. It was a conflict that had been building for a couple of years. And, but it was a meaningful one. So anyway, like I said, I'm just trying to hit some of the highlights that you guys can see. Check that one out, see what was going on. You can look at the whole sign house of the sign that we're visiting. That one was Leo. Go to September of 2004. At this time, I was in graduate school, and I was starting to deal with one professor and a small group of students who really had it out for me because I was writing about psychedelics, and they were basically they were harassing me because they felt like my writing about psychedelics was not whatever sophisticated enough. So that was, and I actually had to go to human resources in my university because some of my classmates made a website devoted to making fun of my writing about psychedelics, and it was just like this really nasty thing that happened. Isn't that interesting? But that conflict would lead me to really double down on writing about psychedelics, and I ended up, publishing a book about it. So it was a meaningful conflict. You go forward to October of 2006, and I'm just sharing with you some of the things I saw. I would love to hear your stories too in the comments section. So what do you guys find when you look at these? I thought it was really fascinating. You go to October of 2006. You have it in Libra. And let's see. So I'm just trying to think where. Oh, yeah. Okay. I remember this one. So this one, I had moved into an MFA program, and there was a conflict happening because we were all in the MFA program. We were all on assistantships. So we were all teaching, and there was a conflict that it was a very Christian school. And so there were some students who, again, having heard that I had spoken of in one of my graduate assistantship classes, English classes, that I had worked with ayahuasca and was writing my MFA project about it. And there were some Christian students who thought that I was like in league with the devil. That was real interesting. Got called into the very Christian, one of the very Christian like administrators' offices, and had to have this like principled conflict about my religious freedom and my right to, be writing whatever I wanted in my MFA program, which of course wasn't in question, but there was some, anyway, I won't go into it because it was a complicated story, but the bottom line was just that was a very intense moment. And also, again, led to me doubling down about my right, kind of sort of religious and creative right to write about ayahuasca within my program. Exactly during the Cazimi. I thought that was just fascinating. If you go forward, the next one is December 2008. So December of, here we go, all the way to December. Sorry, I thought I was there. Here we go. December of 2008. You see it's in Sagittarius. I thought that was fascinating. Went through another kind of intense moment around love and relationships, and was interested in someone who happened to be going through a divorce. At the time that we started dating, they were in the process of divorcing, and so there was a lot of conflict that was just in the air around like whether or not this was a good idea and stuff like that. I found that to be a fascinating one. Then what was really interesting about that is the lessons I learned from that relationship directly correlated to, I think the kind of growing up that I did in that relationship led directly to me feeling sort of ready for, and I think meeting my wife. I don't know if you guys believe that kind of thing, but I believe some relationships are sort of like training wheels for for maybe a more mature time in our life. So anyway, 2011. If you go to February of 2011, here we go. Oops, right there. So right about at this time, I had really sort of launched my astrology career at this point, and there was one of the things that I noticed. I'll just put this broadly before I share a little detail about the story that I noticed for myself around this time. Is broadly speaking, these seeding moments can also be the moments of initiating something that requires a lot of effort and perseverance and strength and willpower. So it was right around this time that I actually met my wife, and we started working toward what would end up becoming a yoga studio that we would launch together. So I thought that was really interesting. We worked together at a retreat right after this Cazimi and started turning the wheels. And that was in my career house, that one in particular. Fascinating. Anyway, so then let's go forward to April of 2013. So, oops, I'm in 12. Let's go to 13. So here's in April of 2013, they're coming together in the sign of Aries. Couldn't recall this one. It's strange, but there was nothing that I could really recall during this time. So, but you may look at the whole sign house of Aries. And I'm sure if I spent a little bit more time with it, I could, but I just sat and I was like, I just can't remember what exactly was going on that spring. So then June of 2015, at this time, I found this to be really super fascinating. So around this time, we were in the process of purchasing our first little house, and the owners started going through this massive divorce conflict issue. They were selling the house by court order. They had to, and ended up delaying the sale of the house by several months because of this ongoing conflict that they had. We didn't have a conflict with them, but they had a conflict that delayed the sale of the home. And that got started in June of 2015, right? It's just amazing. Now go to July of 2017, and you have the next. Here they are again in Cancer. And let me just make sure, is that right? Yeah. It might be actually that it's in Leo. Yeah, it is. It's in Leo. Sorry. There we go. So it's late July 2017 in the sign of Leo. I will let you guys think about that one. I think I've probably shared enough of my own little stories just to illustrate there were some very poignant and interesting conflicts at that time that were setting the table for other things to come. And then if you go forward again, you can go to September of 2019. September 2019, here it is. Wait, did I mess it up? I think I might have just pushed it a little. There we go. So here's looks like early September, late August, early September 2019. Fascinating that this one coincided with Ashley's parents getting divorced. And that was a very poignant time. I feel like it showed up more vividly in her chart than mine, but okay, so that's 2019. Go to October 2021. And here it is. This is October 2021. And I'm just going to back this up just a touch so you can see. I saw around October 7th, 2021. This is the most recent one. And this coincided with the beginning of the sort of internal conflict that I started having about the religious tradition that I was a part of. It really seeded right at that time. Fascinating. So what do we take from that? What do you take from that if you do your homework and find out what was happening around those times? What I took away is that these Cazimi moments bring several things. One, they bring the ending of conflicts. So they can very much announce that this conflict is being dissolved, which is the Cazimi with the sun almost is like saying, now we, what's the phrase, bury the hatchet, or now we lay our swords down on the ground, or now we, the conflict has reached the point where we can go no farther. It's done. Doesn't necessarily mean peace, but it can just mean the beginning of the end of a conflict. The other thing is that it can mark the beginning of some kind of conflict that will have, much to offer and provide us with going forward. So some conflicts, like in the case of a few of the graduate school periods that I was in, those conflicts really galvanized me to become more bold and more empowered when it came to writing about something that in two different situations I was sort of being picked on for writing about. One, I was being sort of misunderstood by this kind of Christian fundamentalism. And in the other, I was being made fun of for writing about psychedelics. Both galvanized me to write more, and I had some really good encouragement at the time from some teachers. I mean, it wasn't like the places that I was in were totally filled with ignorant people. There were some people who really had my back and helped me be like, ignore this and keep going. So sometimes there's a way in which conflicts can come up that sort of galvanize and encourage us to be strong and empower us somehow. The other thing is that it's clear that the Cazimi moment can mark moments of cord cutting or separation that stand as a new beginning. So you've got a relationship that's forming as a divorce is happening, or you have, in two other cases, the seeds of what would become a divorce or a divorce itself during previous Mars Cazimis that I experienced in my own biography over the past 30 years. The cord cutting can be like, in a weird way, I would say that for some people, when they reach a divorce, it's a moment of extreme conflict. It's also a moment of resolution. Like, we've been fighting for years. We're going to sever the cord now, which in a sense brings an end to the conflict. So I hope you can feel into the nuance of the situation. Conflicts that galvanize, conflicts that inspire, conflicts that are coming to an end somehow, or cord cutting that needs to happen, either marking a new trajectory that you're going in, or distinguishing yourself, or separating somehow. Those are all actions of Mars, the cutting, the severing, but the Mars Sun, the sort of resolution of an old conflict, or the galvanizing and empowering of Mars that happens at these moments. So, my trajectory as an astrologer has always been one of trying to teach astrology through personal storytelling, because I feel like it's best when you can understand the transits through what people actually experience. So we do your stories ungrabbed, and I try to infuse a lot of my own stories into the way that I present the astrology, not because I think my life is so special. It's not. It's just another life. But because when you can speak from personal experience, your heart gets on board a lot more easily. And when you hear someone talking about an astrological signature or archetype from the heart of personal experience, a lot of the times that's the way, at least that's the way that I think that people who like my channel like to receive the astrology. So that's a big part of the way that I do things. But I really encourage you to sit here and use the template that I just provided you with through some of the research that I did, and do that same thing for yourself, because that's when you're going to feel those personal stories are your heart stories. And when those stories come to your memory under subsequent times, even if you could only discover 4 or 5 of them over the past 30 years that click, it's still something that will allow you to feel and notice the same experiences or archetypes now, because you're making connections that they're in the very fibers of your psyche in relation to the pattern. That's how we make the meaningful connection now, especially if we're having a hard time noticing it, or we're trying to develop the skills to be able to notice them more easily. Okay, so that's all I've got for today. And I'm so, I'm happy to have taken the time to do that, because for me, it was really interesting, especially given the kinds of things that I'm noticing are happening right now. It's giving me a lot more context to work with, which is super helpful. So isn't it amazing how also there's almost like this musical, harmonic, rhythmic quality these are like echoes that are reverberating off the acoustically refined walls of our lives. Isn't that cool? So I think it's a real privilege that we get to look at and experience our life through a language of meaningful patterns. And I just try to never forget that. That's what keeps me doing this every day, is knowing that that is rare and really special. It's really special that we have something like this, that somehow we've come to acquire a taste for, an interest in a language that can do so much for us. So we should feel really fortunate that we have this language in our lives. Okay, well, on that note, thank you guys for listening. I hope you're having a good day. We'll see you again tomorrow. Take it easy, everyone. Bye.